Joining us now, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the commissioners of one of the biggest leagues on earth. He's been a commissioner for a long time now, has seen a lot of things, but I don't know if he could have projected how popular the league is and how popular the sport is, or the fact that he could potentially get a CBA negotiation done a year early. Ladies and gentlemen, the commissioner of the NHL, Gary Bettman.
Yay!
How you doing, boss?
I'm doing great, and it's always great to be with you because I love the fact that you're such a fan.
Yes, lucky to grow up in Pittsburgh. Obviously had a lot of great times. Hockey was good to my family, my community, and the sport is obviously spectacular. Let's talk about the state of the sport. It feels like, and I mean, we can dive right into the Four Nations right now, but at that Four Nations moment, it feels like that was a real, Kickstarter to hockey becoming a huge part of Americana thinking and buying into the fact about how great the sport is. Do you agree with that notion? And do you feel like the sport in the league is more prominent now than maybe ever in the United States of America?
I think over the last 3 decades, we've seen an upward trajectory pretty consistently, but every now and then there's been an extra boost. And whether it was outdoor games or going to the Olympics, which we used to do 10, 15 years ago and we're going back to, what worked so well on Four Nations was the pent-up demand for international best-on-best competition. We think we do that as well, if not better than anybody, and it was something that was really important to our players, which is why when you saw the event, you could see that they were all in, which is why I guess it drew such positive comparison to all-star games in some of the other sports. At the end of the day, this meant a lot to the players to represent to their countries, and they showed it in the way the competition played out, and they showed it even after Four Nations was over based on the number of players that came back to their NHL teams injured.
I know that you don't love the stage fighting, I believe is what the NHL would like to get rid of. The booing of a national anthem leading immediately to a fight, I think, was great for all parties. I think it was great for all parties. But you mentioned there, Tkachuk got hurt leaving there. Tkachuk was like Captain America in there. Now, obviously, he's on the Stanley Cup champions. He's one of the leaders of the Stanley Cup champs, and he would get back for the playoffs and obviously another Stanley Cup run. But they were leaving it all out there for this thing for their country, and I think people learned about the players that make up the NHL and how great your sport is.
Our players are great, and whether it's just playing hockey for the love of the game or trying to win the most iconic trophy and the hardest championship to win in the Stanley Cup, or representing their countries, they don't do anything half or three-quarters ways. They do it at 110%. And, the good news was, with the booing of the anthems and the issues between the U.S. and Canada at the time, we got through that. By the time we got to the playoffs, there were no booing of anthems, whether in the U.S. or Canada, and people were just focused on the hockey, and the players were focused on winning. And, I don't know for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tkachuk were still injured by the time he came back to play in the playoffs. Although, as you know, our players, they play injured all the time, and particularly in the playoffs. And that's what makes our game so great, the commitment that our players have to their teams, to their fans, and to winning.
Yeah, the culture of the league is ultimately shown by its players, I believe. And your players are all dogs. And you talk about playing hurt. We'll get reports after a team exits the playoffs, and it'll be like, this guy had a fractured sternum, also had a broken foot. They were literally just propping his ass up on skates and pushing him onto the ice. It's like, you don't hear like that anymore about any other sport other than hockey.
I don't think you ever heard that in any other sport, although I assume when you referred to dogs, that was a good thing.
Yes, dogs are good, Gary. Yeah, dogs are good. D-A-W-G-S.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, D-A-W-G-S, not D-O-G-S. D-O-G-S too good. I got a couple of those, Chuck, Valerie. They're good dogs and all that. Let's talk about, you talked about Tkachuk, and you talked about Lord Stanley Cup, obviously, and how remarkable it is. We had a chance to hang out with it here one day, and obviously the stories of the Stanley Cup, and Darius J. Butler is obviously reaping the benefit of winning another one. What is your thought? Congrats to the Florida Panthers on going back-to-back.
Hell yeah.
And now with Zito signing everybody back, it's like we're obviously in the middle of a dynasty here. We have to talk about that. Not every league loves dynasties. I think there's some leagues that are making rules so that dynasties don't happen. I think obviously the NFL had the New England Patriots for a long time. The Chiefs can still be in the middle of making one, but it's very difficult, especially with salary cap and money and business and how everything has to go. How does the league, yourself, feel about this Florida Panthers team, especially because how good they represent hockey, I think, as a whole?
Whether or not dynasties are good or bad, my view in sports is it is what it is. And if a team can excel, to do what the Panthers have done 3 years in a row in the Stanley Cup final, winning back-to-backs, they're looking very strong as we project ahead for next year, having re-signed the three important free agents. The stories are what it's all about. It's what takes place on the ice that makes it great. And if they can pull off a three-peat, that'll be remarkable. But we've always prided ourselves, particularly in the last 20 years post-salary cap, that our competitive balance is extraordinary. The races to get into the playoffs at the end of the regular season, we had 3 teams that didn't know their playoff status for the last game of the regular season. And I think that's what's compelling, and that's what brings fans to the game. If, in fact, the Panthers can do it again, kudos to them, and it's a testament to the players and to what is being done by management and ownership to give all the resources and to build a team that has this chemistry, making all the right decisions. So, we've had a couple of back-to-backs over the years, but overall, we see lots of changes. At least 5 different teams, I think over the last 10, 15 years, with one exception, we've had at least 5 different teams turn over in the playoffs every year. And I think that's great for fans because we want our fans to know that no matter who you root for, your team is a shot of making the playoffs, and then once the playoffs begin, anything can happen.
Yeah, hope. You want your teams to have hope. That is legit. And speaking of hope, South Florida has become that. Here's Darius, obviously, lifelong fan.
Absolutely. On that note, Gary, Panthers came into existence a couple years after you became the commish. Are there any examples? I told the boys up here, I never would have thought in a million years. I know we went in 1996, but I never would have thought in a million years that we would be back-to-back champs and have a dynasty in South Florida. It was almost like not a joke with a franchise, but you had the Heat, you had the Dolphins. Is there any example for you with the fanfare and the buzz down there compared to what it's been, the last few decades?
Well, a couple of things. One, since Vinny Viola took over as owner, and you'll always hear me say that it all starts with ownership. Vinny and his family have been all in, whether it's building a new practice facility and renovating the War Memorial in Fort Lauderdale, whether it's bringing in Bill Zito to put this team together, whether it's everything they do in the community. The Viola family has been nothing short of sensational. You see the same thing in Tampa with Jeff Vinnick. It's not about state taxes; it's about ownership. And I think it does a disservice to the great work that's being done to think that that's what makes the difference in the team. It doesn't. Players have lots of reasons for picking or not picking teams to go to. If you look at what Daryl Cates has done in Edmonton since he's taken over with the Oilers, but even if you look at things like the Samuelis owning the Anaheim Ducks, where they did bring a Stanley Cup champion, when they bought the team, I think there were 5 or 6 high school teams in Orange County, and now there will be between 50 and 60. Ownership, commitment to fans and the community, giving teams the resources, whether it's the coaching staff or the practice facilities or everything they do around the game, all of it makes a difference. And that's what players look for when they're deciding, when they're free agents, where they want to play.
You become an ambassador of the sport as a whole, let alone an owner of the league, especially for that area. South Florida, a lot of talent in athletics. I wonder if it'll translate into hockey someday, maybe with Tkachuk and the boys, with what they're able to build. Now, that naturally leads to a question of something that has been kind of reported about. Expansion in the NHL. I heard there's a couple cities: Austin, Houston, Atlanta. What's that 4th one, Gary? What's the 4th one?
There are probably 8 cities that, we've heard from Indianapolis, we've heard from Cincinnati, we hear from Quebec City. The list goes on and on. We're not focusing on expanding right now. I'm not going to issue an edict that says if you want an expansion team, file your application by this date. I think the most important things at 10,000 feet in expansion are ownership, which we've just talked about, market, arena, and what does it do to make the league stronger, improve our footprint? Because we're a little bit different than the other three major sports in that of our 32 teams, 7 are in Canada, which is a good thing because of how strong the game is in Canada. We're like, if you want to draw a comparison, we're like the NFL is in the U.S. based on how we are in Canada. Just look at the last national deal we just did a couple of months ago with Rogers. If somebody wants to
no big deal. You just say just a subtle flex right there. That was a subtle flex out of you, Gary. Yeah, I was like, just look at the Rogers deal. What's going on up there?
Little flex. Okay, but if somebody can check those 4 boxes and wants to do a deep dive, then I'll take it to the owners and we'll consider it. I'm not pressuring anybody. We're not giving deadlines. If it's going to be right, it'll be right. And if we wait a while, if ever, to do any more expansion, that's okay too, because our 32 teams have never been healthier, never been better owned, never been more supported by their fans.
All right, I'll get to work for Indianapolis. I assume some others will as well. Let's talk about the game continuing to grow, and obviously you're big in Canada. International growth, obviously always a forefront of conversation. Go ahead, Connor.
Yeah, Gary, Pat mentioned the 4 nations this past season, and as someone from Boston, I actually was able to go to the 4 nations final thanks to Pat and SeatGeek. And for the city, it was incredible, and then of course the product was unbelievable. So when it comes to the World Cup of Hockey, when you're thinking of what cities to host it, I personally would say Boston's probably the place you want to keep it. The Northeast just makes more sense, I would say, and real true hockey fans up there. But what are you looking for exactly with the World Cup of Hockey kind of selection when it comes to the city, and what do you expect for those 8 nations, kind of those teams to be like?
That's a great question. Boston and Montreal were great hosts. The history, the tradition, the connection to hockey in those cities is unbelievably strong. We just put out requests for proposals for cities, both in Europe, to host a portion of the World Cup, and in North America. And so we'll see what comes back. But to get everybody up to speed, we're going to be on a cycle. Next season, we're going to the Olympics in Milan. 2 years later, we'll do a World Cup. 2 years after that, we'll go back to the Olympics, and then 2 years after that, a World Cup. So we, with the Players Association, who we do this with, are committed to getting a regular schedule of best on best for our players. It's great for the game, it's great for our fans, and most importantly, our players really want it.
You just said you and the Players Association. I mentioned it in the introduction, but we haven't really got a chance to chat about it. A year early. Now, granted, it hasn't been voted on. I don't think it's officialized, but there's been a lot of reports that basically, hey, we got a deal. I think on NHL.com it says we've agreed to terms or something like that. So we don't know exactly where it is in the process. We do know it is about a year ahead of schedule. That never happens. Never. Never happens. And in hockey, you guys have had work stoppages before because of labor disagreements. Now, games at a strong level, leagues at a strong level, and it feels like your guys' partnership is at a strong level with the players as well?
You're absolutely right. So let's take it at a couple of points. One, we have an agreement in principle subject to ratification both by the players and by the teams. And that process is ongoing. We've had an interesting history of labor relations, including, as I think everybody knows, 20 years ago, we had to lose an entire season to get the system that we have in place, which is the salary cap with revenue sharing. We have a new executive director. I think he's been in between 2 and 3 years, Marty Walsh, former mayor of Boston, huge fan of the game, former secretary of labor in the United States.
Legend.
And he's run unions before he had his political career. And we have a terrific relationship. He is very collaborative, very professional. We don't necessarily agree on everything, but we know how to deal with the process. And Marty is of the belief that it's great for everybody, including the players, if we're all on the same side and we're working to grow the game, and with a year left in our collective bargaining, we managed to work collaboratively together to have a good collective bargaining process, which started around the end of February, the beginning of March. And I think we made a deal that is good for the players moving forward, make some adjustments for the teams that's good moving forward. And I think it says a lot about the state of the game and the growth that we can have with this terrific foundation and predictability, because nobody now has to worry about what happens in collective bargaining over the last year of the current agreement, which happens in most sports. Then it's a distraction. And I think together we managed to go through a really good process.
Yeah, especially with your advertising partners, too, not having a threat of potentially losing a season with negotiations like, hey, everything's kumbaya with players and us. How kumbaya? We get a deal done, which is worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars a year early. That's insane to think about. It's very abnormal, though, right? Did it surprise you whenever it was like, man, this feels like an actual partnership here? Let me explain my story, my stance on this, Gary, just so I can explain it to you. When I got drafted to the NFL, they send you to a rookie symposium, okay, like a week later. Rookie symposium my year just so happened to be DeMaurice Smith's first time speaking to like a group of players. And what he said is, we're about to get into CBA negotiations. There's going to be a lockout or whatever, and we need to fight them. We need to fight them on everything. And my first thought as a person that is interested in business, it's like, man, just fighting your business partner doesn't feel like the right play. Lo and behold, a lot of disagreements, blah, 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 blah. Then we move forward. I wasn't as naive. I was naive at the time. I learned like, oh, there's fights in every one of these. It's like 32 lawyers taking on the player lawyer, and they're fighting for every inch. We can drop a THC testing level, 0.05%. What do we have to give up? Well, 45 days of work on the other. It's like everything is just like tooth and nail. I don't think that makes sense, personally, from a business perspective. So whenever this starts happening with the players, are you surprised and excited, I assume, at the same time?
But listen, we've had our battles. People credit me, I use that word in quotes, with 3 lockouts. If you don't have a partner who gets the big picture and is willing to engage, you're going to have disharmony on the collective bargaining front. Fortunately, Marty Walsh and we've developed a great relationship. And as I said, while we don't agree on everything, we know how to deal with that. He gets the big picture, which says you need a healthy business for it to benefit everyone, particularly and including his members in his union, namely the players. And so, first of all, nobody would ever accuse you of being naive. But more importantly, you've got the big picture, and that's how we've managed to come together. And in that regard, Marty and I are on the same page in terms of what we need to do is do the things that will help grow the game at all levels for the benefit of everybody, not just the players of the league, but for our fans as well.
Yeah, but it's whenever the league knows, like, hey, we can build, we got to work still. Like, that's a good thing. Like, I think some leagues get to a point where they think they're big and they don't do all the other stuff, and then all of a sudden people start talking bad about your league. It's like, I appreciate the fact that you guys acknowledge it. I love that the players are on board. The Olympics is a good idea because that's going to be some hockey that some people have never seen the sport before. And if they're watching, like, the best of the best play, it's like, yes, this is a sport I love, you know?
And by the way, you're 100% right, and I agree with you, but stopping in the middle of the season for 2 weeks is a bit of a disruption, and it's hard to deal with. But on balance, it's something we think is important to work our way through. The deal terms they're either being finalized with the IIHF, the International Ice Hockey Federation, and the International Olympic Committee either today or tomorrow. And in fact, Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley is in Zurich today to deal with that very issue. So we know it's important. We know it's not without its difficulties, but on balance, it's important, and that's why we manage the complexity of it all.
That was awesome. I just heard what the owner said. Yeah, Olympics, awesome, fun. We might lose a $30-40 million player, and we got to stop our league? Okay, like that is hilarious. Okay, we got another rule that we think should be put in place. Tone, one half of the Hammer, down. Cowboys from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Gary, there was some unfortunate, untrue rumors last week that Sidney Crosby was going to be traded from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, they were untrue, but just so we don't have it again in the future, can you make a rule in the NHL that Sid is not allowed to be traded from the Pittsburgh Penguins, please? But in also, go ahead, sorry.
Sid has been unbelievable for the game on and off the ice. He's been unbelievable for Pittsburgh. My guess is if he ever moved, and I have no reason to believe he would, it would only be because he wants to go to a situation to finish out his career. I'd be surprised if he ever moved, and I know how important he is to Pittsburgh, and I know how important Pittsburgh is to him. So, in this era of social media where anybody can put out anything, you really have to verify before you get all wound up about something.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you're not just in this situation. That's every single day out there on the internet. There's a lot happening that you got to kind of keep your eyes peeled for. And obviously, you two have celebrated a couple different times about what things. Yeah, you look good. Look at you. Hey, natural.
Yeah, I was much younger then.
Hey, Gary, we will say this. We've been noticing. I don't know if you've been noticing. Feels like round of applause. Now, at the draft, you're going to get your ass booed. I think that's just normal. But I think hockey world's, don't you think? I think hockey world's like, hey, Gary, you're doing it.
Actually, I get booed. It's a sign of affection.
Definitely.
If they ignored me, I'd be concerned. If I'm getting booed, it means they're paying attention.
Commissioners have to make tough decisions against fan bases and teams, so you're obviously putting that spot, especially with work stoppages. But I would like to let you know, from us reading the tea leaves from outside looking in, it's like Gary Bettman, to use a wrestling term, kind of a baby face right now in the hockey world. I think you've done great things for the league and sport. I think people see that, Gary.
Thank you for saying that. And by the way, getting booed at the draft in L.A. Friday night was worth it to see moments like Matthew Schaefer coming up and the emotion of him being drafted. And we talked about that when he came up, to see the ovation that Meredith Goudreau got when she came to make the Columbus pick, to see Charles Barkley and Adam Sandler participate, on behalf of Philly and Boston. There were some really great moments. Yeah, okay, we switched from a centralized draft to decentralized. Steve Mayer tried some things to make us look a little bit different than what other leagues do. But you know what? Unless you try some things and even stumble a little, you don't get to a great place. So on balance, we had a very impactful and meaningful draft.
We thought there was a lot of clips, too, that came from it, which is obviously very important for the modern era of media. And I'd like to say, as somebody that talks into a microphone on a regular basis, you hosting that thing, not bad. You were walking people to things. You were talking. I mean, you were hosting out there, Gary. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the league. How we doing? Let's send over here. I thought you did a great job.
Thank you. I actually had fun. I didn't sit down for 5 hours, and so when I finally sat down, I couldn't get up. But at my advancing age, you got to be a little careful. No, seriously, we had a good time. I think the people in LA who attended the draft had a good time, and we actually sent out a survey to see if our clubs were happy with the decentralized draft or they want to go back. My guess is, on balance, we're going to keep doing what we did. And it was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. Congrats on another successful NHL season. Can't wait to see what's in store. And congrats to whatever expansion city puts together the proper pitch deck and says this is a city that should have an NHL team. Because if the NHL comes to your town, there's a lot of greatness coming alongside of it. I was fortunate to grow up in Pittsburgh. I love watching the league. Thank you for taking time for us to have a conversation.
Always great to be with you. And thanks for all you do to cover all sports, but especially ours.
I'll tell you what. I wish I could skate. I can't skate. I saw Patty Maroon.
Never too late to learn.
I don't know. I think it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner of the NHL, Gary Bettman. Thank you, buddy.
Hey.